When I was a kid, I fell in love with science. I wanted to become a veterinary surgeon, changing the world in whatever small way I could. But as I grew up, I quickly found out that there were two problems with this. One, I'm allergic to cats, so that's been a problem. Two, I'm a woman, which was perhaps even more surprising to me. You see, women in the United States make up about half of the population and half of the workforce. But when you look to STEM fields, women only make up 24%. Now there are several problems with this. Not only do women make up about 60% of all masters given out, but women are also, as general, very well educated. Out of all women in the nation, we somehow can't break into the STEM field. Now there are two important reasons why we need to look to this. Because there are several congressional acts that allow women more access to shorten the gender gap, to shorten the amount of discrimination that we face in the nation. But there isn't anything quite firm enough for us to depend on. This is why we need to look to the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, the Equal Rights Amendment was 3 states short of being passed. Time and time again, it's put forth, and the people who sponsor it think this is the time that it will be passed. This is the year. This is our moment. But it never is. That's why we need to look to it now. There are 2 reasons why the Equal Rights Amendment needs to be passed right now. 1, it would establish legal precedents. And 2, it would change societal views. Now first we will look to legal precedents. Because the problem here is that women simply are unable to sue for their equal rights. For example, when you look to the wage gap. Over the past year, the wage gap has only shortened by 1 cent. It went from 79 cents to 78 cents, and that's what it's at right now. It's even worse if you are a woman of color. If you are of African American descent, it's going to be about 60 cents. If you are of Latina descent, it's going to be about 50. And although congressional acts, such as the Lilly Ledbetter Act or the Pregnancy Protection Act, both of these have made it more accessible for women to gain their rights in the workforce, it simply is not enough. Although people would argue that these congressional acts provide necessary protections, that women and men are already equal, it simply is not true. Because congressional acts can be repealed at any moment, and depending on the administration and changing societal views, they can change from day to day. You see, congressional acts simply are not enough. That's why an amendment is needed. What the ERA would do is it would set legal precedent on which any type of case could rest on. Because in order for these cases to be successful, you need that legal precedent. What you also need is accessibility. Because although the Lilly Ledbetter Act made it more possible, that doesn't mean it's more accessible. The lack of a legal precedent means that different cases can extend for 10 years, 15 years. And this simply is not realistic for any woman to go through. But an Equal Right Amendment, an amendment of any type of that nature, would shorten the amount of time that these cases would go on for, because it establishes a firm legal precedent. And that's why the Equal Right Amendment is needed in that sense. But what it also does is change societal views. Because you see, there's a type of stigma going around against women. Whether you look to little things, such as a teacher looking for a strong boy to move that desk, or you getting paid less than your male counterpart despite the fact that you are more educated, there are different types of discrimination that go on around the world, specifically in the United States. There is a ranking system that ranks the different countries based upon how much gender equality that they have reached. It goes from about 0.001 to 0.999. Now you would think that the United States would be very high on this ranking system, however it isn't. The United States isn't even in the top 10. The United States is in fact behind South Africa. Our rank is 0.704. South Africa is 0.76. Because there are about 934 pieces of legislation, individual pieces of legislation, that prevent women from reaching the same equality that you would expect them to be able to get. 70 to 90% of the United States believes that we already have the Equal Rights Amendment Act. But according to those over 900 pieces of legislation, we are not equal. And we aren't equal until we get the Equal Rights Amendment Act. Because what it would do is it would change societal views. We saw the day after the election, millions of women marching in the United States, all demanding equal rights. It is in the forefront right now. that we give women the same rights that men have. And the Equal Rights Amendment would do just that. In my English class, there is a poster on the wall of a quote by Leo Tolstoy. What it said was, "We always want to change the world, but what we don't think of is changing ourselves." It's always the United States that preaches equality, that constantly says, you're treating that person bad and that shouldn't be happening. And it's constantly the United States that goes in to fix these types of atrocities. But it's never the United States that looks to changing itself. And that's what we need to do right now. Those 3 states that did not pass the Equal Rights Amendment need to do it now. We need to show the rest of the world, and we need to show, more importantly, our own citizens, that we value them just as much as the other person. That every person is equal not only within themselves, but within what they can do. Women should not be limited just because other people are making ideas for them. That's why the United States should change itself. Thank you.